Welcome to the Magnetically Aligned Woman. Walk into your power through self love, self worth, and authenticity. Today, I have a very special guest. Her name is Christine Chang, and she is a best selling relationship author and speaker based in Los Angeles. She has helped high performing women create ideal relationships in their personal and professional lives by teaching self awareness, boundaries, accountability, and communication skills. And she has a book actually. Her book is called Show Up Finding Love for Independent Women, and has helped thousands of professional women all over the world create the relationship of their dreams. I'm so excited. Welcome, Christina.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
First and foremost, like I just want to say, as a woman in general, especially a high performing woman, we tend to overlook, like we tend to put our careers first. We tend to do all of these things, and our relationships are kind of like on the back burner. So for you, like, your relationship an integral part of like your life? Was that something you were looking for?
It was something I was looking for. It is something that I always wanted. However, it was something I wasn't naturally good at. Like work felt natural to me. Like I know what to do. I have confidence in this area, but the love part, I didn't feel this way. And I remember thinking, what's wrong with me? That was like the underlying feeling, like, is there something wrong with me? Because everywhere else I feel like I'm kicking butt. I have great hobbies, I have great friends, making good money, but the love part was always appealing to me and intentional for me as well, that I wanted to create it. And I think that's important to have clarity regarding that, because I think some people, maybe they feel pressure, they're supposed to be in a long-term committed relationship with someone, which it is very fulfilling, but it's not for everyone. Sometimes your career will come first, depending on where you are. If you're in building mode and stuff, it's completely fine to say, I want to focus on this right now and it's really fulfilling to me. Dating's on the back burner, you can acknowledge that. However, if you're one, be honest with yourself too, because deep down, some people might say that, and then they might deep down, but oh, it would be nice to have someone though. And if you do have that desire, I think that's when people come to me or they read my book, to get clarity on what you can do to speed up that process and how to show up so you can help create that, because it doesn't always just fall into your lap, as great as that sounds. That would be lovely if it happened that way.
I want to circle back a little bit into your personal journey and like why you decided to become a relationship coach and write your book. What was the main inspiration behind it?
Well, I always wanted to have a positive impact on others and help others. And with this particular area, I never thought I would be a professional relationship coach, because it's something that I struggled with. And because it's something I struggled with, that's why I dove into learning about it. And also, I've been to the depths of hell and back emotionally regarding that whole process. So it allows me to empathize with women who are going through it as well, because I think there's a lot of solutions out there, but I haven't seen many people who can empathize with, like, God, like, it sucks when you're going through it, especially as a high performing woman. Sometimes it could be embarrassing too. Like, I'm supposed to be good at all this stuff, and people ask me, like, why aren't you married? They assume it's easy for me, and like, I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. I remember having a hard time with it. So I think I know how hard it can be when you're going through the struggles of dating, when you feel like it's not working out, or like the same thing keeps happening over and over, or if you have underlying pain that keeps coming out. For example, uh, just being devastated when you're not chosen by someone, feeling not good enough, processing all those. Oh man, it could be so hard while you're going through it. So that was my goal. Is I was like, if I could just help one person, I will feel good, because I remember how hard it was for me. And I sought out coaches and therapy and did my thing when I was in my journey before I met my husband. But I just really wanted to support other women in this area because it comes up in conversation a lot too. We all like to talk about our relationships. It's a big part of life. I always like to think, if I'm on my deathbed, what are the things I'm going to be thinking about? What are the things I'm actually going to be caring about? And it's not like, oh, cool, I got this award, or, it's always relationships, family, friends, my partner. So I value them a lot. And I think in the end, that's what we have to take with us is the memories with people. And so I want to better them and hopefully inspire people to do the same.
I love that. And it ties so perfectly into the theme of being aligned, because alignment just means so many different things for so many different people. And I said, relationship has been a huge part of my life. I'm sure there are so many people out there who are also feeling the same way, who have put their careers first. And in my personal life, like, I remember my relationship was okay, and then it was better than okay. I took that for granted. And what I struggled with most was like my career. And so, like, I flipped it around, and it's like I had so much trouble in my career that it was affecting my relationship. And so that's where it was like, oh my god, it's this like very holistic view of what areas of my life am I missing, or do I feel like I am aligned in certain aspect but I am not really aligned in other aspects, and how can I even get that right? And so my biggest question for you, first of all, is like, can you um, define alignment for you?
Yeah. The most simple way I would put it, alignment is when you feel good and proud of who you are and how you're showing up. And only you know that. You know when you're feeling good. And one of the exercises in my book is to describe what that looks like. What does it look like when you feel good? And for example, for myself, when I feel good and aligned, I'm super inspired. I talk a lot. I get a ton of ideas. I sleep well. All these things I know when I feel good. And then I also list out when I'm not aligned, when I don't feel good. What does that look like? I might grind my teeth at night because I'm stressed. I get irritable. I might go shopping a lot. I might want to buy expensive things, almost kind of like to fill a void. Like I feel like I'm not enough. So getting clear on what that looks like for you when you're in alignment, because it might look different for everyone. For me, I think the simplest way to put it is you feel good. Because when you feel good, you're not so focused on what the exterior is either. I mean, if you feel good and you're really happy in life, which that's many people's goal, like I just want to be happy, you actually won't focus as much on what's actually going on, like, oh, but I'm single but I feel good, so who cares, right? Because you can get into a relationship and not feel good, and then what's the point of that? You check that box, cool, I'm in a relationship, but I don't feel fulfilled, I don't feel heard, and I'm not happy. I'm like, that, then what's the point? So alignment is feeling good. And I like to say, like, the superstar version of yourself. And so when I chose my husband, that's what I was looking for. I wasn't looking so much for specific traits of a person. I did have preferences. I made my list, as most people do, but I looked more at how I was feeling when I'm with him. How do I feel? Do I feel like the superstar version of me? Do I feel like this? I can be self-expressed and go out in the world and be the best version of me. If I feel like that when I'm with him, that's a good sign.
I love that. So we focus so much on feeling, and I think that's very important to first establish how you feel and then make the actions. Can you give us some um, tips and tricks as to like where to even start that process?
Absolutely. So to start, I do think that most people have some healing to do. I think it's hard to move forward when there's still things that you're hanging on to. And so this comes down to self-awareness. It's almost like cleaning up some mess before you you move forward. I think you can't fake your way forward if there's still things you're hanging on to, because you're just going to drag it into the next relationship. So with healing, for example, for me, like some of the areas that I needed healing came up in therapy. And my mindset was just, I wanted to try different things just to see, I might get something out of it, I might not. And sometimes I would try a workshop or do something and I didn't really like it. And that's okay. The important thing to me is I was trying to do it. And so I'll just give some examples of my personal healing journey that helped me. I call a lot of it blind spots, because if you're a person who tends to stuff down emotions, which that's me, sometimes you don't even know, like, oh, I never knew this bothered me, or I have pain here. And so for example, with my parents, with my dad and I have a really good relationship. So I never thought I had like any like daddy issues or anything. We always got along really well. I always thought like, I want to marry someone that's like really similar to him. I like the quiet comfort. However, I realized when I was in therapy that he he had done some things that were out of integrity before. And it's one of the reasons my parents split. And I had said so many times, they split when I was around 12. And I had said many times in conversation, you know, when people ask like, oh, are your parents together? I'm like, oh no, they're divorced. Matter of fact, matter of fact. And through therapy, I realized that was such a sore spot for me. They're divorced. And a therapist is great at giving you space, like a safe space. So I just kept crying, like, I didn't know that bothered me. And I had wrote a letter to my dad. And this is in the middle of when I was on a personal growth, like high as well. So it's a good space to be too, because you don't take anything so personal. You just do what you want to do without really caring what the other person says, or you understand you have no control over what their response will be. So my intention for the letter was, I just wanted my dad to know that, you know, he never said sorry for some of the things that he did. Like I said, you know, you didn't just hurt mom. You didn't think about Crystal, that's my sister, and I, you know, that you had a family and that it's hurtful, and you never acknowledged that. And all I wanted him to know, I just wanted him to know that. And I wasn't looking for a sorry for him or, you know, anything like that. I just wanted him to know. And I sent it. And the next time I saw him, for me, same. I was just like, hey, dad, you know, same thing for me. But I felt like I was already healed because I just sent him the letter. I'm like, that's all I can do is just let people know how I feel. Yeah. And he hugged me so tight. And I mean, this is like an older Asian man, okay? That he's not the most emotional person, but he hugged me really tight. And he's like, I don't know like why I'm so emotional right now. I'm so sorry. And I got that from him. I wasn't looking for it, but it had an impact on him. So that's just an example of, you know, one thing I did to heal. And I feel like when you heal too, I almost can't explain it. I almost, you know, you just feel so much lighter, and like it's a clean slate for you to create new instead of maybe doing unconscious patterns. So that, long story short, that's a place to start, is to have self-awareness around where you need healing, maybe. And it's different for everyone. Some people read books, some people go to therapy, some people do plant medicine to gain the awareness. I think you also gain awareness just by dating and just by looking at patterns, like what keeps showing up, what do you keep getting triggered by, what's not working for you. And then, sorry, I have so many ideas, but I'll just give one other that's maybe a little more light and positive. Your goal is just to feel good, right? I usually tell people when you're going out on dates, you're swiping, you just want to feel good. So think of the things that put you in that state when you're just really happy. Who are you normally around? Like hang out with the people where it makes you feel good, or do the hobbies that make you feel good. Like I love dancing. That's when I feel like I'm in alignment, is when I'm dancing. And I remember when I was single, I would get hit on the most, either when I was working. I used to be a wedding photographer because I'm in the zone, right? I'm very passionate about my work, not, you know, paying attention to anyone else, just doing my work. And people just would always hit on me when I was working, or I would be on the dance floor. And it's not because I'm the best dancer, it's because I enjoy myself when I'm on the dance floor.
Mhm.
So I knew I felt good when I was doing these things. So that was my goal. If I was ever not feeling too good, I'm like, my goal is to feel like that. So do those little things, go to French cafes and eat chocolate croissants if that feels good to you. I think that also builds self-love as well, treating yourself in how you want to be treated.
Oh, I love those examples. I love those examples because they touch on the core foundations of something that I coach and so many coaches focus on, which is like focus on your inner being. A lot of times we try to, we think that the exterior or the outside result is going to make us feel a certain type of way. And realizing, once you get that, whatever goal it may be, once you are in that relationship, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, this wasn't exactly what I wanted. Like, this is not what I asked for. And then it happens over and over again. It's like a repeating cycle. Like, why am I, God forbid, like, why am I in another relationship with an asshole? Or why am I in a relationship with another narcissist? And it's like those patterns over and over and over again until you realize there is something that I'm missing. And usually that core is, let's take a look at your past. And this is something I work through in my personal experience too, because my core wounds come from my relationship with my mom. And so the self worth and the self love and the attention seeking and the success and all of these things that I wanted externally for myself has always been tied to that notion of, if I do it this way, if I people please, if I if I strive for success and more money, then somebody will come into my life and love me. Or, clients will love me, and whoever, my mom will love me. And then I realize, I'm creating from a space of lack. I'm creating from a space of, I'm broken, or I'm missing something, or I'm not good enough. And realizing, first I have to be aware that this is happening. And also, I have to acknowledge myself that I've gone so far. And I think it's a subconscious, like oftentimes we're subconsciously not thinking about that, and realizing, wow, like I need to love myself first. And all my past experiences with my parents, that's just a reaction to my past. It's a reaction. It does not define me who I am in this moment. And declaring, I do want to feel good in my relationships, and I'm not going to settle for anything less than.
Absolutely. It's great when you get to that space as well. I think intellectually, I think if you do a lot of personal growth, I feel like we know a lot of things. Like I should, I should choose differently. I should want better, but then the actions might not match yet. But I usually tell people, I'm like, when you're ready, when you're done with a certain pattern and you want to create what you want to create. You will know it for yourself, and no one, you can only do it for yourself. Coaches, your friends can tell you all that they want. You could read as many books, but it does feel really good when it all aligns and what and your feeling matches, so that you can make different choices to get a different result.
Thank you for sharing that. Oh, I'm getting chills because like that's the thing. It's knowing when you are ready and waiting for yourself to be at that stage to be able to take that step. I think that's huge. Um, did you ever have like experiences where people kind of just, they're just like, why aren't you in a relationship? Or like, did you ever have those experiences?
Yes, a lot of people who didn't know me super, super well would be surprised if I said I was single. They'd literally say things like, "Why aren't you married?" Like almost like they're confused. And I, I usually like didn't want to talk about it. I would just say like, "Oh, I just haven't met my person yet." But I knew like I just keep choosing the wrong people, and I have low self-worth. I knew I was the one that was causing the result. Like, because I knew I felt anxious with these guys, and even if you try to hide it and you don't say it, people pick up on that energy. And I remember hating feeling that way. So Yes, I did get that question quite a bit. And yeah, I was never very clear about the answer to give them an answer. But some people, they would just say like, oh, it'll come when, it'll come when it's supposed to come, which I mean, and intellectually, I understood that. I'm like, I understand you can't force these things, but at the same time, I'm like, I feel really crappy right now. And I don't want to like wait for it. Like, when is that? Is that going to be like in 10 years? I remember just feeling really frustrated at times. Like, like why are things the way they are? Like
Mm,
plopping on the couch and just feeling so defeated and so frustrated. But when you, I mean, that's all part of the process too. I like to remind people to be gentle with themselves. I mean, that's part of the self-love too, is loving yourself when you hit those lows, because that's what I wanted someone to do for me. Like, I'm like, oh, if I ever get into a partnership and I get married, I want my husband to accept me for that as well. When I'm not looking so hot, when I'm depressed, when I don't want to get out of bed, when I freak out, like I want to be loved for that. So I had to learn to do that for myself. And I think it's like a 5 to 6 year process for me, this whole like struggle. And I might say I got to a point where the self love was really good. And, I took myself on trips. And when I would see, psychics and stuff, if you're into that, like someone tell me, like, I can tell you have a lot of self love. I'm like, oh,
oh,
good, good. The work's paying off. And yeah, when you have that, it sets the bar for how you expect to be treated. Because if you don't treat yourself well, you will tolerate someone who maybe doesn't treat you that well either. But if you treat yourself really well, at the first sign of someone else not treating you well, you will not even tolerate it. You'll say
mm,
no, because you know what your standard is. Like, I'm used to treating myself really well. Like, why would I be with someone who treats me crappier than that?
wow. Thank you for sharing that. I find that like it's relatable and in so many aspects of relationships, not just romantic relationships too. This can show up in professional relationships as well, where it's like if you're in a position that you don't value yourself and you don't set those boundaries, then people may be able to take advantage of you. And in the end, what you feel is like maybe burnt out, or you feel like, wow, I'm doing so much and I'm not getting anything in return. Like that exchange is not equivalent. So thank you for sharing that because it does shed so much light on, awareness of I'm not feeling so good about whatever's going on. So maybe I need to change something. Um, I want to like touch upon the second part where you said, where you shine the brightest is when most guys took attention. And I think that's super exciting when you are in the moment and you are aligned with your work, which is so funny because when you're aligned with your work and you're radiating and you're like, I don't give a care in the world about my relationships or boys in this moment in time, that's when everybody flocks to you. And
Yes.
so and
Yeah.
so can you share a little bit more about that, about like why that happens?
Yeah, I do think energy is a real thing. I think, I mean, it's kind of dipping into more like spirituality. It could be too woo woo for some people, but I do think everything is energy. And I interview a lot of single men on my podcast, and a lot of them will say when I ask, like, what normally draws you to somebody, like not usually not swiping, but like in person, if we're in a room, what draws you to a woman? And most of them will say, like it's her energy, it's her energy or aura. And I mean, it's just attractive people are a dime a dozen, okay? And you could be really attractive, but you could have really like downer energy. Like people in general, like draining, people don't want to be around that. People want to be around people who feel good, like life is light and it's playful and you feel good. So the men will say whether they say something or not, even if I haven't talked to them and they're across the room, you can see it. You can see who has that energy. And I just tend to be drawn to that. So in terms of measuring it, I don't like, I'm not really in that world. So I can't give you numbers or like a scientific explanation. I just know, at least from my personal experience, like when I feel good, I have that good energy, more good tends to come. And then when I'm doing not so good, sometimes it does attract more bad things to happen throughout the day.
Mm, I love that. I related to if you compare yourself, um, I always compare this to like what we currently do have. Like, for example, if you have a friend that's always like, oh, I hate work today and life is so blah, and just being in that space consistently, it drains you. And versus being around someone who's like always happy about life, like they love what they're doing. And so if you show up that way too, it does become magnetic. People just want to be around you because you are happy, because you're doing things that you love, and you're not in that space of every day like, oh my goodness, nothing is working out for me. And in terms of energetics, um I cater to more energetics, and I've been studying about this a little bit more. But when it comes to energy and vibration, we actually would it be called 7 feet? It is 7 feet. We have a 7 foot bubble that we just affect other people without them even having to interact with us. And so, you having a higher vibration, people can sense that. And so, when you say, like, oh, I love what I'm doing, I'm not even paying attention to these men. And they're just like in your space, in your 7 foot bubble. And they're just like I see you, Christine, I
it
see you.
it is like being a magnet. It really, really is. And I like to say, I mean, you might have heard it before, that you attract what you are.
Mm,
And so, I mean, in some sense, I mean, some people don't like when I say that if they've had a bad dating partner, but I'm like, if you keep having a pattern of, for example, dating emotionally unavailable people, you yourself, to some degree, you are emotionally unavailable. And it's taking self responsibility for that too. Because if you were really available, there's no way, okay, maybe they'll cut, one will hit on you, but you would not tolerate it for a sec. You won't even be attracted to that. You're like, oh, not available. That's not what I'm looking for, because I'm here and I'm wide open and I'm looking for the same thing back. So I mean, people are different. Sometimes I'm like you, I prefer to feel good and be high vibe. And some people, they're used to being in a kind of downer mood and they're used to that and it feels familiar to them. And they say maybe they like it. I find it hard to believe. I'm like, if you could choose though, wouldn't you want to feel good? But if you kind of like live in that state, I do think that you tend to attract people. Like, look at who you're hanging around, look at your friends and what you guys are doing. And usually if they're not feeling so good, could be complaining about a lot of things, and maybe that energizes them. Like, I don't want to be judgmental, but I just know for myself, I like when I feel good and light, and I try my best to be that so I could attract more of that into my life.
oh wow, I love that. So attract what you would love to have around you. Attract how you would actually personally show up and what you would like. And it starts with yourself first. It starts changing your attitude. Like, where am I not showing up emotionally available? Or where am I not showing up for myself?
Absolutely. And it's very liberating when that clicks, when you start taking that self responsibility, because I do think a big part of it is in your control of, I mean, that's all we can do is control how we want to show up. And then, you meet your person or you don't. I like to be very optimistic. I like to think as long as you're around people and you're not like solo in the middle of the desert or like the Amazon jungle, if you're around people, and you feel good, the likelihood of meeting people you connect with is very high. Not all of them might be your life partner, but the likelihood of just meeting people is high if you're open and you put yourself out there. So I think mindset's very important as well, because if you live, for example, in a big city like New York and LA, and you're like, oh, dating here sucks, none of the guys want to commit, and you really believe that and you keep saying it, that's going to be your reality. You're going to look for reasons why you're right. We love to be right. However, I mean, I know people who live in big cities who are in very loving, committed relationships. Like it's there. It's there if you want it. So that's up to you. So I think entering it with a open, optimistic mindset is good. And like you said, not lack, because that's a hard space to be in if it feels like lack. That's, I think, when the desperation comes in too, which is not a, it's not a, people typically don't find that attractive.
Mm. And in your personal relationship now, like, do you have a certain um, checklist of like, okay, he meets my basic needs, and or he meets certain needs? Like, is there a way to measure that?
Yes, the first step is being very clear on what you need, because wants and needs can be different too. Like you might say, oh, I really want him to be type A and a go-getter and all this, but you might need someone who's really patient and supportive. And usually if someone is a type A entrepreneur, a lot of times they do lack patience, and they're good in one area of their life because they're fast and they do all that. But when it comes to feeling emotionally supported, then you feel left in the dust, right? Like, oh, like he doesn't know how to show up for me in this way then. So you need to get clear on what you need. And for me, I'm a very sensitive person. So emotionally, I did need someone very patient, and that made me feel safe. And that was lacking in previous relationships where I didn't feel safe with the person. So my husband is phenomenal and making me feel very safe. And he's so patient. He's like the most patient person I've ever met. And this comes with the flip side too, because I mean, you're married, so like your favorite thing about someone can also be the thing that drives you nuts. So the patience sometimes, because I'm an entrepreneur and like to be really fast and efficient, chop chop, I find that a lot of times I'm like, why are you so slow? Like, because he's patient. He doesn't have that sense of urgency, which is okay, because when it comes down to it, I'm like, what's most important to me here with my life partner is that he's reliable, he has integrity, he does what he says he's going to do, he loves me, he shows up for me, and I feel like I could be me around him. That was the most important thing to me. So I think once you're clear on that, you know what your non-negotiables are. But I like to recommend with women, because sometimes we can be too picky. I think I'm like, where can you be flexible? Yes, we have preferences. We should all have preferences, and you should, ask for what you want. But it's like, in the end, does it really, really matter that he makes more money than you?
Mhm.
And for some people that is a non-negotiable, which is fine, but just really think about that. Like, does it matter that that monetary figure is more than yours? Or do you just care that he works hard and he's on his way, that you both have the same work ethic, that you want to build something? Because I think that is more important than the actual number in the bank account. uh yeah, so getting the clarity, and a lot of times that comes through dating as well, and learning. I still learn stuff about myself all the time through my husband, like, oh, I didn't know, or changes, right? Like, oh, I don't really like that anymore, or or new interests, like things like that. And that's, if you're someone who values growth, that is going to happen. Things change and you always learn about yourself.
Oh, oh, that is beautiful. It's so beautiful because you touched on something very important. And by far, like my relationship, of course, has its ups and downs, and I had to learn through those downs. What is important, because of course I had ideals. Of course I was like, I want you to be more romantic, I want to be taken out on dates like Cinderella and all of these things. And we had broken up quite a few times over that, because I'm like, I'm telling you over and over again, I want you to be more romantic and you're not doing it. And then I remember, like, is that really important to me? And then I realized, what was important to me was the fact that he understands me, right? It wasn't the material stuff. It was that he's always here to support me no matter what I want to do. And trust me when I say I am a crazy person and I hop from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. Some people have told me, like, you stress me out. Like, I can't believe in 2 weeks you're already on to the next project, on to the next thing. And yet he has that kind of patience for it. He's like, I will allow you creative freedom. I will allow you to explore and grow, which is a huge part of personal growth. And I will allow you to just express yourself. And I was having this conversation with my sister, and I was like, I can never be in your type of relationship. And she's perfectly happy. But for her, she was like, I can't dress promiscuously because my husband feels uncomfortable by that. And she's okay because that's their boundary, right? I would be like, hell no. Like, I want to dress whatever the heck I want to dress and go out and have fun with my friends because the trust is there. And for me, that was so big. So when you mentioned, like, sometimes you may want a hustler just like you, but then you realize in reality, you want someone to listen to you. You want someone to make you feel safe. And so establishing those is extremely important.
Absolutely, especially if we're talking about long-term or life partner. I mean, if you're just having a fling, 3 months summer fling, and you're in Bali or something, and he's like a remote worker as well. Awesome. Okay, that might work. It's fiery, it's inspirational, but then you have to think about, if you do want long term, what are those qualities? Like, that person's going to be in your I say in your house. You're going to be living together in the same bed. You see where my mindset's at. I'm still I'm still adjusting to being a we. Yeah, sharing a bed, and what it's going to be like every single day. And so my dad used to tell me, he said, when you choose your forever person, you'll choose differently. And I used to think, when I wasn't ready for it, I'm like, God, that sounds so boring. And it's just because I wasn't ready for it. And I'll be honest, there's parts of being with someone long term. P and I have been together almost 6 years now.
Wow.
That do feel boring, because it's predictable. Like, he is reliable, so I know he's going to do what he says that he does. So it is predictable, right? But that's what I want. I don't want someone who I'm not sure if he's gonna show up for me. Like, that sucks. So it comes with, I mean it in a good way, like a good boring. That's when it's like stable, right? And that's what I want. I wanted stability. I feel like those fiery type of relationships are so exhausting, especially if it's forever. I'm like, do I want to be dealing with this kind of stuff forever? And I learned through dating. I dated like the type A guys that were more like me, and there's benefits to it too. You talk business and all that, and it's very inspiring. But it never worked for me. There was there's a practicality to relationships, which might not be like the sexiest thing to talk about, but it's good to consider if you want a healthy functioning relationship. And once you have that base, then you could build on it, and then build that, like, those little magical moments. And I mean, like you said, it sounds like your partner is very similar to mine, where they're not, like, Pete's not very witty with surprises. It won't occur to him on his own, but if I tell him I want something, he'll get it for me. Like, oh, I really want that ring, and he'll get it, which is so sweet. But in the beginning, I remember thinking, like, man, I wish it would just occur to him that he would listen for my subtle cues, like, oh, she likes this, I'm gonna go pick some up for her, which my female friends are excellent at, by the way. And that brings me to another thought. Like, you can't expect everything from one person, right? We have like such high expectations. It's impossible. You want someone who's type A in this moment, but then patient and supportive in the next moment. Like, we all want a combination of these different kinds of personalities. And so humans, we used to operate in villages more, so you would get all that from different people. So I think community is also very important, and just accepting that my girlfriends are going to be better at certain things than my husband in certain areas, right? Like they're female, they get me in certain ways that he's not going to, and that's okay.
And that's okay. Beautiful message. Thank you for sharing that. Oh my goodness. I know we are wrapping up with time very soon, and I know you have something very special to share with the audience. Would you be able to explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. So with high performing women, our time is usually pretty important to us. And so if you are dating and you're looking for a potential long-term partner, it's good to see someone's values, right away. Because I think that your core values should be similar or match. Because if they don't, I don't think long-term it's going to work out well. So I compiled a list, it's in PDF form, of 10 questions you can ask on a first date or just early in the relationship that will reveal someone's values. And the questions, I mean, they're fun. And I mean, I also advise, like, you're not asking them in a like interrogation way either. Like, so what's your relationship with your family? It's not like that. You want it to be like light and come from a place of curiosity. So for example, like, what are your pet peeves? I mean, it's good to know what someone's pet peeves are, but the reason I put that question on there is because their answer and the way they say it will tell whether they take responsibility for themselves or not. For example, is it like, oh my gosh, I can't stand when people like make a smacking sound when they're chewing. It's like disgusting. What's wrong with them? Or do they say something along the lines of, I don't know, I just have this thing with chewing. I'm just so sensitive to it. It's two different mindsets. And of course, we all have our moments. Sometimes I go in a blame mode too when I'm having a bad day. But I think you could see how they answer the questions. It's a glimpse into how they can approach life and approach certain things. And man, if they're already not taking responsibility and it's the first date, like that's a flag. That is red flag.
Wow, thank you so much, Christine, for sharing that with us. And definitely, you touched on a very important aspect, tone of voice and how you show up. Oh my God, the things you can tell about someone just by little subtle cues like that. Um, I'm super grateful to have you. And we are definitely anyone who is interested in Christine's freebie, I will go ahead and link that below as always. I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Christine, thank you for joining me today. And we cannot wait to see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone.